Hey, Auntie.
What's up, baby? You know you can tell Auntie anything.
Hello, everybody. We're back. The aunties are in the house. And you may recognize that there's something a little bit different tonight. There is a man on board. DY, who is co-executive producer of We Are Your Aunties, and also he wears another hat in the world, which is a cultural commentator. And we need him tonight for this conversation. It's going to be very different than usual. I am Paige Means Hopper. I am the author of Healing the Wounds of American Slavery and a movement of the same name. And I am joined by two amazing women, Auntie Rosemarie and Auntie Genoa. And I'm going to go ahead and release this mic so they can introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. So nice to have joined us. We are so excited. My name is Auntie Rosemarie, and I'm here to give of myself, and I'm ready to pour it on and drop some knowledge. So be ready. Get ready, baby.
Get ready if you're not ready. And as a matter of fact, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Auntie Genoa. And I am also a published author, a songstress, and a poet. And your own experience is not necessarily the best teacher. Someone else's is, if you will have ears to hear. So welcome.
I'm listening. And finally, our very special guest tonight for our conversation, all kinfolk. I'm sorry, all skinfolk ain't kinfolk. It's our commentator, cultural commentator, and our executive producer, DY. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell people a little bit about you.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm DY. I am the cultural commentator, also the co-executive producer of this wonderful, beautiful show with all these wonderful, beautiful aunties that I love absolutely so much. They're so wonderful, aren't they? Yes, and I'm here tonight to, help give some insight and some input and have some fun and get some things off our chest. And we're going to go ahead and give you a good show and some info to take home with you. So strap yourselves in, get you something nice and warm to drink. And yes, we're getting ready to get at it tonight.
All right. And speaking of that, I am coming off of flu symptoms. And so please forgive my teacup, but I will be grabbing it every now and then. I just want to say that this topic tonight is a little bit different than what we normally do. We're talking about behavior, certain behaviors that occur when incidences and events happen in our communities, like the one that happened in Memphis, Tennessee, regarding Tyree Nichols. And what I want us to do is take a moment to really be in the moment and sit in it so that we can examine exactly what may have caused this and how we really feel about it, what we really think about it, which is two totally different things, and how to get past it without scrolling by it, if that makes sense. Virtually scrolling, psychologically scrolling, physiologically scrolling, just kind of trying to skip by it. So the first things first, I'm going to obviously read out of the book, but I wanted to kind of dig down into the facts of what happened. Not all of the gory details, but the facts without the emotion on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that when we get caught up in the charge of emotions, we're not thinking straight about how these wounds came into play. And again, in order to get through the wounds, in order to purge the wounds, we first have to identify the wounds. And so this wound that we're going to be talking about tonight in particular is, I believe, based on my research, my study, my knowledge, is internalized racism. In other words, taking on the behaviors of the oppressors of our ancestors. And even in the modern day construct, continuing to take on the behaviors of our ancestors' oppressors. So again, we'll always go to the historical context, and then we'll bring that up, connect the dots to modern day cultural events and trends. And then I'm going to ask the audience and my co-host here and my special guest to support us with the process of coming up with what we see as going into our future, stopping the behavior, stomping it, crush, killing, and destroying it, how we can really do that. And again, I say, when these events happen, like with George Floyd, for example, but tonight we're talking about Tyre, but when it happened with George Floyd, there was a big uproar, there were protests, there were discussions, there was policy, there was, more training in the police forces, just all this uproar of activity. But then it's still happening. So the changes of policy are absolutely great, but does policy really affect the human heart? Does policy really affect the behavior in such a way that it changes things forever? And so we're going to be looking at it from that angle and that perspective. So I just wanted to say that on the evening of January 7th, Tyre Nichols was pulled over by the Scorpion unit in Memphis, Tennessee. He was 29 years old, an amateur photographer, a skateboarding enthusiast, a father of a 4-year-old son. And he was killed by the Scorpion unit, which is approximately 40 officers who had already been reported as being intimidating and violent in the Black communities, particularly the lower economic communities. Again, this happened in Memphis, Tennessee, and the Scorpion unit had been in effect for about 14 months in operation, and since approximately November 2021. They were a very high-profile unit, and they had done this type of thing before, just not to the point of death. Like there were citizens who had, reported that they had been pulled over for a seatbelt violation when everyone in the car had on seatbelts. And yet they pulled the driver out and wrestled him down to the ground, sprayed him in the face with pepper spray, and, hurt him. And his name was Montarius Harris. He was 22 years old. And they would go after violations like tinted windows and seatbelt infractions and broken taillights and cracked windshield, traffic violations, which essentially is racial profiling, is what it amounts to. So they were beating Tyre Nichols as he was begging to go home. He later died at the hospital. And what we need to know about the Scorpion unit is that young Black men were being disproportionately targeted by them at about 90%, when Black people only are at 65% of the population in Memphis, Tennessee. Work those numbers. The police interviews with, many victims, dozens of citizens and others who have been attacked have been reporting these attacks, and that these so-called officers of the law were relying heavily on these vehicular stops. 2 of the officers who were charged in Mr. Nichols' death refused to do written reports in prior incidences of violence against citizens. Scorpion disbanded. Okay, they disbanded it since Tyre's death, and since the 5 Black officers who were charged were charged with murder. Then they disbanded the Scorpion unit. Now's the national outrage and the discussion. There's always that component of each one of these incidents, right? So we're in that phase right now. Also, the EMTs who showed up at the scene of Tyre's murder did not tend to him for at least 19 minutes when they arrived on the scene before they administered any aid to him. All the remaining Scorpion officers, although Scorpion has been disbanded, are still at work on the streets, interfacing with people. No training or policies were shared with the media as to how this particular Scorpion unit, separate, high-profile, kind of violent unit, was trained. No policies, no training has been exposed to the media or the public. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say to you. They drive an unmarked Dodge Chargers, unmarked Dodge Chargers. They do not put on their lights. They do not sound their sirens. They do not announce who they are. They just roll up on citizens, tell them that they've done something, won't tell them what they've done, like with the seatbelt charge. They all had seatbelts on. So then they started naming all these other infractions and kind of confusing the minds of the driver and the passengers. An attorney for several of the clients arrested by the Scorpions said that the perception is that they often seem to be looking for trouble. And if there isn't any trouble, they'll create it or cause it so that they can do what they love to do best, I guess. So the New York Times listed numerous stops, similar stops to the one that they used or employed on Tyree to get him in a position where he feared for his life and started running. And at that point, as we know, any Black person in America who's ever had the talk, or anyone who has been stopped by the police, knows that the last thing we're supposed to do is run. But when your life is at risk, the adrenaline and all of those things might cause one to run. So I want to look at tonight how the Scorpions, in my mind, and based on, again, my studies, seem to be mimicking the behavior of paddy rollers, which were patrollers in the slave era during our ancestors' enslavement. How they're similar to that. Now, there are two different organizations or two different positions I want us to look at. The first one is that patrollers, slave patrollers, were there to make sure that not too many gathered in one spot at one time. Mm-hmm. And that came out of fear of retaliation. And then there were the slave catchers, who didn't have as much latitude or leeway to hurt or kill slaves because they needed to return those slaves, the slave owner's so-called property, mm-hmm. back in good condition. I'm talking about the patrollers, the ones who were poor, very, very low on the economic ladder during that time, right? And who felt that they had a vendetta or that they needed to keep these Negroes under control. Mm-hmm. I'll use the word Negro tonight, but you can fill in the blank. And so I just want us to have that conversation about how what the Scorpion unit and these 5 Black men who beat a Black young man to death, how their behavior seems to mirror or pattern after mm-hmm. the paddy rollers and the slave patrollers of old. So I'd like for us to start our conversation with that. And then as we get into the conversation, I'll choose a place to read from the book. But I want to throw it over to the aunties, and especially to our special guest, our cultural commentator and our leader of the background of We Are Your Aunties, our executive producer, DY. And I'm going to take a sip of tea while you do that. Anyone can take it.
I think I want to start. I have a problem with this whole thing. A lot of people don't know, but I used to live in California, and I drove the bus. And one night when I was going to pick up my pregnant daughter from her job, I got followed for at least, I don't know how many blocks. And then when I was turning into the parking lot where my daughter her job was, then the lights went on, and I got beaten up. I've never forgotten it. And I noticed, like the fear for your life, we get the talk. We're the only ones that get the talk. But I feel like if this Scorpion group, if they were high profile, they've had something to prove, and so they had to make sure that they didn't show no mercy on any people of color, because then whoever they were trying to impress would then be like, oh, okay, we can use them to it's a clout thing. And I don't know. I just feel like, because I'm a female, and I'm not a big female, and it was like 6 officers that was like 3 and 4 times my size, and it was, they were high-fiving each other and everything. All the stuff that happened to me. If I went into the story, it's a horror story. I just kind of put out of my mind, but I couldn't watch the video of Tyree because it brought that type of it brought it up. And I had to go to jail and everything. I had to hire a lawyer to defend myself, and nothing happened to them. The stuff that I could have used to defend myself disappeared. And you know what they told me? Welcome to California. But I'm here to tell. I'm here. I can speak, but Tyree can't.
Right.
He can't.
Right.
He can't speak. They were judge and jury. Clout. I believe they were clout chasing, because they had to prove themselves to whoever gave them their platform.
Wow, that is so deep on so many levels. And I just want to, again, because I've heard this story before, but it just kind of registered in a different way this time. I just want to say that I'm sorry that happened to you. And I needed to also add one more fact, which is that after the 5 Black ex-officers were reprimanded, then we discovered that there was a white officer on the scene who was doing the initial pepper spray. And like you, I couldn't watch the video. I couldn't do it. I watched only to the extent, when I came in, it was at the point where they had placed him against the police car, his back to the police car, and then I just had to turn it off. I couldn't watch it. But yeah, thank you for sharing that story. That's vulnerable that way.
I'm sorry that happened to you too, and I understand the welcome mat to California, coming from the DC area and Virginia, and during the O.J. Simpson trial, I was coming to California, and actually after the verdict, and when I got here, I was driving to my destination, and I didn't see the stop sign because it was literally covered with a tree, and it was just hidden. So I passed by it, and I got pulled over, and I was pulled over, and he came and he looked inside the car and said, where are you coming from? I told him, and he said, I need your license, registration, you know what you did. And I just said, okay, I complied with what he wanted. And I'm going to tell you, I was on that road for 5 hours. He was daring me to raise my lip, to give him the side eye. He was waiting for me to just give him a or anything. The way he talked to me, funky, like I was on something on the bottom of his shoe. He kept me there because he was meaning to hurt me, and I knew that. So I kept my mouth shut, and I
understand.
I am not the type of person that would like, okay, yes, boss, no. But this man was looking to hurt me, and he just wanted an inch. 5 hours I sat while he just kept coming, taunting and saying all things to make me give him something, even a huff of breath, so he can take his stick and beat me. So I said, and then he said, welcome to California. So, and because people were really upset about that O.J. Simpson trial. So, and he took it out on me, how he felt about it. But I understand what you're saying, Auntie. Genoa, because it's hard when someone beats you up for no reason because you're you, because you're black, because you're different, or because somebody don't like you, or someone is ignorant of your culture or you as a people, and
Yeah.
just hating for no reason
Yeah.
or out of ignorance. I understand that, but what I need to say is this case, when I have to say it, when I found out that they were black, I was shocked, I was hurt, my heart was broken. But at the same time, I realized that it is not that's nothing new. This is nothing new. Born and raised in Chicago, all the time, officers beating up young men, young women, whoever, and to try to get them in line
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
to prove a point,
Right.
to show that I'm in the game with you.
Right.
And it's unnecessary.
And it's interesting that you should say that, because Jacqueline is with us. Hi, Jacqueline. And she had said that the officers are brainwashed, wanting to be accepted so badly by the boys in blue, which is just what you said, the white man in blue especially, that they forget they were black. They forgot they were black. However, they have been quickly reminded. So true. And then Michelle said internalized racism is alive and kicking to an alarming degree. Really creepy. Yeah, it's beyond creepy at this point. And I want to point out what's very interested in this arena here, and then I'm going to throw it over to you, DY, that we have two women, black women, because a lot of the time the focus is on black men. We have two black women right here. One who was literally beaten up and taken to jail for nothing, and the other who was psychologically damaged and wounded for 5 hours straight, which is another tactic. You know, even though it's not physical, it's another abusive tactic, violent tactic. Two women in one place at one time. So it's just interesting how prevalent this thing is. Go ahead, DY. Tell us your perspective on this thing, and anything you want to share is fine.
Yes. I mean, it totally is just, it's unfathomable, because with Auntie Genoa and Auntie Rosemary, them being, harassed by the police, when we're all supposed to have that image of the police to be like those people, those good guys who serve and protect, when they cannot serve and protect. And it all goes back to their origins, the way the police was created. They weren't there to serve and protect. They were there to patrol and control. That's exactly what's still going on. And if you look at these specific these task forces, like the Scorpion Task Force, like the Red Dog Task Force in Atlanta, like Crash in Los Angeles. Look at these areas and who they're targeting. You don't have these specific types of task force in other areas, even if they're high crime areas. But they have them there, and they're all using the same tactics, these kind of intimidation and controlling tactics. The same thing they did pre-1865. The only difference is the technology of the weapons, the technology of their gear that they use. Instead of riding up on a horse, they're riding up on you in a Dodge Charger.
That's it, unmarked. That's right. I thought about that too. Yeah.
And there's really no difference in the mindset of these police officers. And let's get into that mindset. When I say that, you can't really single it out as, oh, well, it's not necessarily a black and white thing when it comes to these police officers, because now you have 5 black officers doing the same thing. The mindset, once they end up getting into this, I'm just going to call it what it is, when they end up getting into this gang called the police, the first thing you want to do when you join a gang is you want to be accepted by the higher ups. So therefore, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do whatever it takes for you to accept me as one of your own. I'm going to do the things that I've seen, that I know you guys are doing, that I know is wrong, but I'm going to continue to do this in order for you to say, you know what, you're one of us, maybe we can protect you and bring you into our brotherhood.
Right.
You know what? I just have to say something else.
Mm-hmm.
There's a power behind that badge and uniform that automatically comes when you put that uniform on. And I'm going to tell you how I know this. Years ago, I was doing some extra work when we dressed as police officers, and they dressed us like you couldn't tell. We had a gun and we had everything, the whole nine. And we were walking down the street. We were just on our lunch, and people pretty much got out of our way. They gave us
Mm.
like they gave us,
Mm-hmm.
they treated us like we were way up here, so much better. Free coffee, they laid out the carpet, and it was a power. It
Yeah.
was like a
Authority.
power
Mm-hmm.
that we felt. We was like, whoa. So with that, that when people treat you in, give you anything, or you can go in any restaurant, you get free coffee, and people, they do bow and scrape and get out of their way. They do.
Wow.
Because they did
Yes.
that to me, and I wasn't even a police officer. We was
Yes,
just
That's really
that's exactly what they do. They're looking for the acceptance, and they're looking to be a part of something.
right.
Also, another fun fact: two of these police officers, they're in fraternities in college.
Oh boy, don't get me started.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
Don't
Some
get me
there
started.
are some who join fraternities for the brotherhood. I
Right.
think a lot of other people join it to belong, for the
Exactly.
acceptance. So it doesn't
Because a lot of them are outcasts. If you look at
yes.
the roles and the records and really look at
Hmm.
their backgrounds, a lot of them are outcasts. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt.
So it doesn't shock me that, okay, now that I'm out of college, I'm gonna join another fraternity
Mhm.
so I can be accepted and have that kind of brotherhood.
Right.
That something else I can join. It seems like it was just a never ending cycle for them.
I
I
got
want
it.
to
And
I want to jump in here.
Okay, go
okay.
ahead.
I want to jump in here. This is the thing. What I've noticed, because when I got beaten up, I was beaten up in my work clothes. I worked in an area where I was used to working with the police and being treated with respect and everything. So that kind of did something. But the other thing is when they expect you to obey them like you're a child. They don't feel like they have to respect you. And if you don't do the bow and scrape and treat them like King Ding Dong or whatever, they have to they feel compelled to make you.
Well, and here's the point. Even if you do bow and scrape, even if you do comply these days, I mean, there may have been a day back in the day where, the talk really worked. And if you really comply, you might make it home a lot more so than now. But come on, let's face it. A lot of these cases that we're hearing, the person was on the ground, on their face, hands behind their back, not resisting, not doing anything. And they still didn't make it home.
Maybe
So
it was
I
a
just
yeah.
wanted to look at too, Tyree's mother. I was watching an interview with Tyree's mother, and she was saying, and at first I was surprised by what she was saying. She said, I literally feel sorry for those officers, and I feel sorry for their families, because for them to have done what they did, what were they thinking? So that's where I kind of want to go is, yeah, what were they thinking? And furthermore, what caused them to act blindly on what they were thinking? And it's interesting too how, just as an aside, how the 5 Black officers were immediately exposed in the media. They were immediately disciplined. They were immediately fired. They were immediately taken into the judicial system, like instantaneously. We've never seen it happen so fast. It all happened within 1 month.
That's because they're Black.
Right. And, well, that's what I believe. And they didn't even give up the white officer.
No, they
The
didn't.
Black men didn't give up the white officer, and the police department didn't give up the white officer who was also there with that pepper spray, who blinded Tyree to the point where he couldn't run, he couldn't do anything. So what is that? I'm going to read a little
Conditioning.
bit from the book.
Conditioning to
Go
protect.
ahead and talk while I get it together over here.
Conditioning to
Yes.
protect.
Yes.
And self-hatred of the 5 black men. Self-hatred.
How do you look at someone who looks like your brother, your cousin, your father, your nephew, your friend? You. How do you look at that person and beat them to death worse than a dog? So I'm in Healing the Wounds of American Slavery. This is the book that I've written. And I am on page 34. What I'm talking about here is I'm talking about our ancestors and how much of a challenge it is to live on the soil where our ancestors were enslaved and we're still not wanted. We were never meant to survive when we were released from slavery. You know, the little provisions that we had, and, you know, there was still a lot of hatred and people still trying to maintain trying to keep their slaves enslaved, even though the law had set us free, all of those kinds of things. So I say deeper still, the festering wounds as a result of the torturous enslavement and treatment of Black people remain right here in the present. The litany of unpardonable sins is evident every day in the lynchings and murders of Black citizens through at least the 1960s, and the ongoing brutality and executions of unarmed Black men, women, children on the streets and in the homes of this so-called civil and democratic society. Even in the face of facts, many still believe we live in a post-racial society. They dwell in denial. But the truth is, there are too many of us dying premature, violent, and brutal deaths. Need proof? Ask the families and friends of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, Tatiana Jefferson, Stephon Clark, Ahmaud Arbery, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Kamani Gray, Kendrick McDade, Timothy Russell, Melissa Williams, Irvin Jefferson, and the list goes on and on. I have so many names here, I can't even read them all in this one setting, but I end with Oscar Grant and so many others we have not heard about, far more than I can even count here. I will not be able to keep track of those who have died since the writing and publication of this book. There will be so many more, not even including the millions of abortions and premature deaths of Black babies due to poverty and the disdain for Black mothers. We are in urgent and critical times. Ironically, the more these issues come to light, the more Blacks are murdered in this country. It seems that the more we wake up to our own state of emergency and want to do something about it, the more violence comes against us to discourage us from fighting back. Worse yet, perhaps, is the slow, silent death of our voices. Apathy, hopelessness, and helplessness have taken hold. We shake our heads in tortured grief, scrolling past death after senseless death on our computer screens. We seem to have internalized these patterns of devaluing Black life to the point of killing one another. We are living a self-perpetuated legacy of harming and murdering our own, which we inherited from our oppressors. We're in a serious state of emergency because although God has planted a seed of very special purpose and plan in the lives of Black Americans, we seem blocked from carrying it out. How can we move forward when many of our ranks seem to be reduced to shivering pools of fear and denial? I get it. It's painful. It's horrific. Like a lot of us said, I can't watch the video. And I get that because it's a re-injuring of the wounds that continue to fester within us anyway. It's a re-injuring of that wound. And then the helplessness and the hopelessness that policy is not changing it. Education is not changing it. Sociology is not changing it. Psychology is not changing it. Economics is not changing it. So that's why it's important, in my opinion, for us to look more deeply.
Yes.
What is it? We already know that it's internalized racism. We know that we inherited it from our ancestors, oppressors, and all of those things. And it's also the rage. It's also the anger. It's also the wanting the prestige, wanting to be somebody in a land where we're told we're nobody. Right? So now what is this other person, this Facebook user is saying, you will go to jail for killing a deer off season faster than if you kill a black body. How about that? Jacqueline, very good.
I've always said, love, the opposite of love is fear. And all of these other emotions are born of that. I mean, we passed just to get out of the slavery. People passed, because they didn't want. And to me, that was a mechanism to survive. And then it was, people can say what they want, but it was a survival tactic for me. And we told on each other, to make master say, oh, okay, you're good today and you're going to be in trouble today, and it gave us some sense of, oh yeah, I'm close to a master, especially if you was a shade lighter with him, and I'm closer to him than you are, because that's why you out here. And it's just a pit against each other. It was a survival of what we had to go through. All the things, even though it was really bad, it was still a survival tactic. The passing, the telling on each other, the I'm better than you, I'm lighter, so I'm better. I'm in the house, you out in the field.
Right.
But mothers still wanted their sons to come home. When they ran away, they worried about him. Is he going to make it home? We're still doing that today. Is he going to make it home? Sitting down, talking with our sons, baby, you got to hold your hands out. We got to do that. Oh, officer, it's all right, officer. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And let's talk about what I just read about the denial, because there was one city council member in Memphis, Tennessee, who said that she literally didn't know that the Scorpion unit existed and that they were as violent as they were, and that they were doing the things that they were in the projects, or where the lower socioeconomic families lived. And she didn't know. But now that I know, now that a man is dead, now that a 4-year-old child is left without his father, now she will go in and try to adjust some policy. There we go again. You can adjust the policy, but what's going to make a difference is adjusting the hearts and the minds of the ones who are enforcing the policy. And the denial of, Black people thinking, that, well, Jesus is coming. And of course, I believe Jesus is coming, but we're to occupy until he comes. So how are we occupying? What are we doing? What are the things that we're doing to really make a difference with all of this? Okay, and somebody's saying, I don't see colorism as much as blatant sexism as a problem holding the community back. That's interesting. I don't see colorism as much as blatant sexism as a problem holding the community back.
I get it.
Okay, then
you get it
on it.
Okay. People, white and whatever's close to it is accepted. And so when people see people, you can be a little, you don't have to be white, but certain shades or cultures are more accepted. And when they see somebody, because black skin, melanated skin has been demonized, and the darker you are, the people don't feel, they don't see your humanity. But if you're at a accepted color and you're wearing your hair a certain way and everything, they'll be, oh, but when you're this color, it's been demonized so much you're not really a person. You're just kind of like just there. And if you're serving them or anything, but if you're being a person that's out and about and like them, then they're like, who do they
Yeah,
think?
but I think we're missing the point here because the viewer did not pinpoint the colorism. The viewer is pinpointing sexism as a problem holding the community back. And you know what? I could speak to that a little bit because when we
And
think
I'm
about
next.
okay,
I'm next.
when we think about what's at the center of the Black community, it's the Black male-female relationship. And that has been so distorted and so abused and destroyed to the point where Black men may be asserting themselves in a certain way to command more authority that they don't receive from the system in which they live. And
Yeah.
so because they can't assert themselves within the system against those who are actually oppressing them, then they may be turning their attention to abusing and focusing negative attention, I'll just say, and negative actions against the women. Come back, viewer, and tell us if that's what you meant. Give us a little bit more on that because that is an interesting concept.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it
It's
is.
very interesting. I mean, it goes back to something I heard by saying that the the greatest way to get rid of a certain type of people is to take away their ability
The
to
men.
reproduce.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so you can look at it as being something that has been systematically put in place for like say like maybe the past like 50 almost 70 years.
Yeah.
Just certain things put in place in order to put the black male and the black female
Mm-hmm.
against each other. Because
Yes,
right now, yes, I agree. Like when it comes to the relationships between black men and black women, it's in total disarray. It's in total and the thing about it is you in order to fix it, you got to get to the root of it.
That's
Got to
right.
figure out what has been put in place to systematically disassemble the black family
Right. And that
and
goes all
then
the way back
rebuild.
to enslavement. It goes all the way back where families were separated, where men were used as bucks, as
Hmm.
breeders,
Yeah.
where, the women were also used as breeders. And so, here's what it is. It's interesting that there's a chemical in our brain associated with sex and intimacy and bonding between a male and a female. I forget the name of the chemical. I can put it in the comments later, but it's like, no, it's like putting a Band-Aid on your skin, right? You put a Band-Aid on your skin because you have a wound, but the more you keep pulling the Band-Aid back to look at the wound, pull the Band-Aid back, after a while, the Band-Aid no longer sticks. Well, the more sexual partners that you have, that chemical in your brain is depleted to the point where you can no longer bond. On the plantations, that's what was happening. The males were being made to breed with 10, 20 women, and families were separated by being sold and other means. And so they were not able to form those bonding relationships and understand how to bond and how to stay. This is by no means creating excuses for our current generation and our current cultural construct, because once you know better, you can do better. And if we know that's what happened, then we need to know how to fix those things.
Hmm. Yes,
I
and it
agree.
goes back.
So what I wanted to say was going back to what DY was talking about. It was the slavery where the man was not allowed to be a man. He was allowed to be a boy in front of his wife and children, and he was boyed down. And that's the same thing happened. That same system was in place in the 60s when if you wanted food stamps, if you wanted welfare, your man must not be
He
there.
has to go.
Husband or not. They
Mhm.
came literally into your house to check your closets to see if the man clothes or anything else of a man was there. It's the same thing. As far as sexism and black women, that's a lot of things that we've gone through and still have to survive and keep our head up and massage our man's head, because what we're doing, and I'm talking about his head,
His mental.
this head, and so I just want to say, there are so many times where I was disrespected, like when I had to wear the high heel shoes in
Right.
order to get an A in class. Another time when I had to, and then it was like either do or not die, but do or or be humiliated. And
Mm-hmm.
I was that, wearing wearing the high heel shoes in order to get an A out of
Yeah.
class. Also, not only that, too, you being a little bit, like I went to the doctor, white doctor, he was checking my throat. Oh, and he made a comment to his other colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Black women have to have these beefy tongues in order to do what they need to do.
Wow.
I 20s, I had to take that. Who am I going to tell? This prominent doctor, he's got a school of people around him. Who am I going to tell? I had
Right.
an eye doctor. I went to see an eye doctor. He was white. He literally filled me up. What is anything else on my body that do with my eyes? So I'm saying they use their position. It is going on today, and we suffer as Black women, not to say any other group, but
Yeah.
especially us suffer through different things. And you can't say something. This young Black girl, me, 19, 20 years old, who's going to listen to me? And this is a prominent doctor for years.
Right. You just took us
Who's
to
gonna
another
listen?
level too. You just took us to an even deeper level too, because now we're looking at the question of America's relationship to the Black body, of the Black man and the Black woman and Black children, as though we're still operating like we're still property.
Yes.
And like they have control and sway
Yes.
over our bodies,
Yes.
over our
Exactly.
very well-being, right? Let's see what
Right.
this comment is. I don't see sexism as the root of the hatred by white racists. No, neither do I. They hate both Black men and Black women. However, I do see it as an issue between ourselves. I don't see it as an issue of the root of hatred by white racists, but I do see the effect and how it has influenced the thinking of Black men and Black women, Black men in particular, since we're talking about these Black ex-officers right now. But that's an
Right.
excellent point, Rose, is at the end of the day, the question becomes, I'm going to ask a question now. The question becomes, have we taken on the psychological position or perspective of our ancestors and their descent, not all of their descendants, we want to be careful here, but I'm talking in general,
Yes.
and their descendants' attitude and perspective about the value or devalue of Black people? Have we taken that on? I mean, it hasn't done a number on us to the point
Yes.
where we no longer value our own people.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Like we started in the beginning, it's inverted. It's internalized racism.
Yes.
It is. And the thing about it is, the reason why we know this is anytime anyone's in a position of authority, what happens? They always demean or do something to the Black male or the Black female in not a positive way. These 5 men in authority murdered a Black man because they're in that position of authority. They did not see the value of his life.
No.
Once you become in that position of authority, just like with Auntie Rosemary, she, was a young woman, and there is this person in a higher position, a physician, that we see also as maybe someone of authority. This
Right.
person is an authority over your health.
Right.
And your health and well-being. And therefore, that person being in that position of authority, they did not respect the fact that I need to go ahead and do, the professional thing. This is a
Right.
Black woman, I can do whatever. Just like with these police officers. This is a Black man, I can do whatever.
Right.
So yeah, so it comes down. So it also comes down to an authoritative thing, someone standing over you, which also goes back down to the origins of the police.
Right.
They're standing over you
Mm-hmm.
to control you. It's all control.
Right. I mean, and we have so many testimonies, and I'm going to get to the one of our viewers in just a second, but we have so many testimonials too, and we have books like this thick. I can't really
Mm-hmm.
this thick
Mhm.
of all the volumes
Mm-hmm.
of all the experimentation done on the enslaved. As a matter of fact, I forget his name, it doesn't come to me right now, but the so-called father of gynecology was doing all of this experimentation with no anesthesia to Black
Yes.
Mhm.
enslaved women for years and decades. And no one
Yes.
said a thing, of course, because, we're not supposed to be able to feel pain.
No.
We
Mhm.
don't have any sensitivity about
Mm-hmm.
our bodies. So someone says, one of our viewers says, yes, I'm talking about an issue within the Black community, and then says, can we explain? Well, I need to understand exactly what your question is. I know that we were talking about sexism in the Black community. Is that what you were talking about, or is it something else? And then we can get a little bit more into it.
There was a thing where they said Black men being in positions of leadership, and then not only choose to marry outside of the race, but don't even serve as mentors, sponsors, or allies to the Black woman.
Okay, so you know what?
Okay, this
Oh,
one. Black
oh,
men being in positions of leadership, but
Yes.
then not only choose to marry outside of the race, but don't even serve as mentors, sponsors, and allies to Black women. I was watching something today. I had to. Ayanna Van Zant. Our philosophies, they match very closely in some aspects and not in others. But she had a show on, Fix My Life, Ayanna Fix My Life, and it was angry Black women was the topic. And they had these women on there interfacing with these Black men who only date white women.
Mhm.
And they were talking about it, getting down to the brass tacks. And the men were essentially saying, that Black women are just angry and they just are too controlling and they're just too boisterous and aggressive and all these other things. But then Ayanna broke the women down to the point where they could explain to the men what it was they were really feeling.
mm-hmm.
I'm hurt. You don't
Yes.
understand how much this country and other Black men and
Yes.
white women and white men and everyone
Comes for us.
attacks the Black woman. Comes for us.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
all come for us.
They
Mhm.
all come for us because
Yes.
they think that they have some ownership or some privilege or what's the other word I'm looking for? Entitlement. Entitlement over us.
Mm-hmm.
So, good. That was your comment. Great, viewer. Have we taken on the attitude of our ancestors? Wow. Well, yes. We haven't taken on, we have taken on the attitudes of our ancestors, but it goes deeper than that. We are literally carrying the DNA of our ancestors. How about
Yes.
that?
Yes.
So we can hardly help it, especially when we're in denial about who we are.
Societal norms. That's what it is.
That's what it
Societal norms, and the children don't know none of the history or anything, and so they think, oh, everybody's my friend and everybody loves me. They don't even know they're in danger.
Yes, yes.
It's another form of passing, and it's escape. That's what it is. These Black men, they want to be men. They want to be men. So marrying a white woman can open some doors that they can. It makes them feel like I'm just as good as you. I'm a man too. It's another form of passing.
Until they get mad.
And also, it's another form of belonging to the club.
Yes, the fraternity.
It all comes back to the fraternity.
I'm as good as.
Yeah.
And also feeling like what the saying used to be, as we're about to wrap. The saying was, it is, the white man's ice is colder. I'm not going to go to the Black store and support my Black brothers and sisters. I'm going to go to the white man's store because somehow his ice is colder, right? I'm not going to engage with Black women because somehow white women are better. And part of that too is wanting the white man's trophy, wanting something that the white man has set on a pedestal that Black men are not supposed to be able to touch. So that's a whole show in itself.
That's a series.
Yeah, we could do like a whole. You're right, a whole series on that, and maybe we'll come back and do a part 2 on this, And this has been an amazing conversation, amazing discussion. And I'm so glad that we were able to stop, breathe, and take a deeper dive on what happened with Brother Tyree. And I just want to dedicate this show to him and his young son and his mother and his entire family. And as we wrap, I would love to give our special guest cultural commentator the last word here in this discussion.
Yes, I just want to say definitely my prayers go out to the family of young brother Tyree. And I mean, it's one thing to say that, you know, oh, well, we just got to do better as a people. I mean, we hear that all the time. But what we need to do is we need to recognize what these issues, these problems, these wounds are. I mean, these five brothers are carrying some serious wounds.
Serious.
And I can tell you right now, they're in this book. They're in this book. So the thing about it is, yes, we definitely need to start addressing all these wounds in order for us to do better.
It's so true. It's so true. Got it. Got it. Well, thank you so much for joining us from behind the scenes, coming up front.
Yes. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun being here, actually coming to the forefront, being on camera with the aunties.
Good. We hope you'll do that again. We really enjoyed it.
Absolutely, yes. I'll have to come and
cultural commentator.
Yes, I will definitely be back to come and poke my head in and say hi to you guys.
You
know, not just behind the curtain, but yes, I'll come see you.
Pay some attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yes.
And what about either of the aunties? Did you have a closing comment that you wanted to make with about a minute each?
Okay, okay, go ahead, Auntie Rosemary.
You know what? It is a lot of levels, and it's a lot of deep hurts and wounds. And the reason why it's not an excuse, it is real. And we do need to know what we're dealing with and what we've dealt with and what has been passed down to us in our DNA. And it's all in that book. It's all in the book of Healing the Wounds of American Slavery. And people need to know.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, as Black people, we come in all shades, colors, and textures. And they have a saying, one drop and we get the whole baby. Have a good night.
And that'll do it. That'll do it. On that note, I'd like to say thank you to all of our viewers. Thank you to everyone who will watch the replay. Next week, we'll be back with an equally stimulating topic. And we just appreciate your continued support. Click, like, share, and spread the world.
Yes.
Spread the world. Expand our world. Spread our world. And definitely spread the word. And we're super excited that you decided to join us and that you're on board for Healing the Wounds of American Slavery's We Are Your Aunties. You can tell us anything, but there's a way to say everything. And we'll go ahead and say good night. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Hey, Auntie. What's up, baby? You know you can tell Auntie anything.